sometimes when we talk about laughter as a way of pulling the rug out from under big religion, and I'll define big religion in just a little bit, sometimes people get very nervous. And I'm hoping that's not going to happen to us. This is not an anti-religion program. It's just an anti-religion program when we look at religion the way it seems to hit me in the head almost every day when I'm seeing what organized religion has in store for itself and for us. So we'll get into that as we go along. The second part of the presentation will be, I'm hoping, your own material, your own, the humor you find in religion and the humor you can use vis-a-vis religion to pull the rug out from under big religion. All right, so that should leave you just confused enough to make it interesting. We're going to start with a video because this whole program is based on this book. I'm hoping you can see that. And there's a trailer. The book is published by Sounds True, and Sounds True made a trailer for the book that sort of sets the tone that I'm looking to share this afternoon. So, Steve, if you want to play the video, let's do that.
In a time when religions are once again captured by fear and confusion, when religions are used to sanction and excuse the basest desires of humankind, one man stands upon the mountaintop and calls to humanity in a clear and unwavering voice, saying, "I have the truth." Ignore this man. Listen to this man instead.
It's time to think for yourself.
All right. So what we don't want to do is listen to the person with the big megaphone saying, "I have the truth." One of the things that I absolutely love about the Theosophical Society, and I know many of you, I'm assuming many of you are members, but not necessarily everybody, but I am a member of the Theosophical Society, and I've been interested in it since high school. But one of the things that really drew me to it and keeps me engaged with it is the motto of the society itself, which is, there is no religion higher than truth. Think about that for a second. There is no religion higher than truth. Yet every religion says, in a sense, it's higher than truth, because every religion is presenting its own understanding of truth, what I would call truth with a lowercase t, as opposed to truth with an uppercase T. Every religion has its own assumptions, or maybe more strongly, its own convictions regarding what's true, and they don't jive. I mean, Judaism says that there is a creator God up in the heavens somewhere who chose the Jews from among all the peoples of the earth to receive God's one and only revelation, the Torah, and the deed to the Holy Land in perpetuity, regardless of who's living there at any given time. That's the truth with what Judaism would call a capital T. Buddhism never heard of it. Hinduism never heard of it. Christianity outright rejects it. Right? Christianity says that God had a son. Islam doesn't say that. Buddhism, Judaism don't say that. So these religions make affirm truths. They affirm them as capital T truths. And yet if they really were capital T truths, we'd all be able to say, oh yeah, because the truth should not be hidden. If it's true for all of us. If it's true, it's not owned by any of us. But religion claims to own the truth, especially what I call big religion, organized religion, each one claiming to own its truth. What a holy rascal does is poke holes in that assumption that any religion has the truth and suggests an alternative. And that's what we're going to be looking at. But not simply as an intellectual exercise. Because if all we do is look at this academically, then basically I've made the point and we would just look at examples. And that's not what we're going to do. I want to take a look at how religions operate and why laughter is one of the most fearful things for big religion, and why they fear it when it comes not only from other religions that may laugh at each other's traditions, but when it comes from within itself, from its own members. Because ultimately, laughter shatters the facade of capital T truth that every big religion is trying to espouse. Well, the Order of the Holy Rascal is basically something I made up just for people who are interested in being holy rascals. And while it's not part of this 2-hour presentation, you can actually get ordained as a holy rascal through my foundation called the One River Foundation. And we are incorporated as an ecclesiastical body, and we can actually ordain people. And we've done that in the past, but that's not what this is about. But that's why it's called the Order of the Holy Rascal. Sapere aude is the motto of the order. It means dare to know. And we're going to talk about, that's how we'll sum it up later. What is it we're trying to dare to know? But I want to talk about the character in the center. This is Nasruddin. So Nasruddin is a 13th century Turkish mullah. So he's a Muslim. And, you know, whether he actually lived or not, I guess we could debate that. But I'm going to just take him at face value. And he is sort of a cartoon icon that appears in many different Muslim countries. This one, I think, is specifically Turkish. But his whole way of teaching was through humor. I'm just going to give you one, I'll give you 2 quick Nasruddin stories that I like especially. Once, late at night, Nasruddin is outside his house, digging in the dirt, scratching on the ground under a lamppost, you know, they have fire lamps. So under the lamppost. People walk by. He's very famous. Everyone knows him. People walk by and they say, Mullah Nasruddin, what are you doing? And he says, I lost my keys. I'm looking for my keys. So to be helpful, they start looking with him. And more people come by and they ask what's going on. He explains he's looking for his keys. And they're all digging around. And finally, they realize if he had dropped them where they're looking, they would have found them by now. So they said to him, Mullah Nasruddin, we've been looking for half an hour here. Where exactly do you think you dropped your keys? And he says, oh, I dropped them in my house. I said, what are you talking about? Why are we outside in the dark looking for your keys? And he points to the lamppost and he says, because the light is better out here. So if you take that at face value, it makes no sense, right? He's what's called a crazy wisdom teacher. He's telling us that we usually go to where the light is brightest, but that the keys that we really need to open up the truth are inside, in the house of our own mind, in the house of our own souls, in the house of our own hearts. That the key is not anywhere but where you are. Jesus says something similar in the Gospel of Thomas, which he borrows or bends or, puts his own twist on it. And he borrows it from a passage in Deuteronomy in the Bible. in the Bible, Moses says to the people, don't imagine that the truth is in heaven. He meant the sky, not some spiritual heaven. But he says, don't imagine that the truth is in the sky, because if it's in the sky, how are we going to get up there, get it, and bring it back so we can live it? And don't imagine that the truth is across the ocean, because how are we going to cross the ocean, get it, bring it back so we can live it? No, he says, the truth is not in the sky. The truth is not across the sea. The truth is in your mouth and on your heart, that you can teach it and live it. In Jesus's version, Jesus says, don't imagine that the truth is in the sky, because the birds will get there before you do. And don't imagine it's across the sea, because the fish will get there before you. Rather, understand that the truth, the kingdom of God, is within you and around you. It's from the Gospel of Thomas. Nasruddin is saying the same thing. All holy rascals say the same thing. You have the truth. The first thing that big religion has to do is to convince you that you don't have what you already have. They have to convince you to come into the light rather than search in the darkness of your own house, your own being. And they call us into the light, and then they get us searching around for the keys, and you can't find them because the keys aren't there. But it occupies a lifetime. And that, in a sense, is what big religion is all about. Getting us preoccupied with the external so that we don't turn inward and find the truth that is in our mouth, on our heart, within us and around us. Nasruddin was once asked to come to a mosque and preach on a Friday. He comes in, the mosque is filled because he's very famous. And he says to the people, how many of you know what I'm going to talk about? Well, they looked at each other and nobody knew what he was going to talk about. So they were silent and no one raised a hand or anything. And he goes, well, if you don't know what I'm going to talk about, there's no point in talking about it. So he leaves. Everyone's shocked, but he's gone. So they invite him back for the next Friday. And same thing, the place is packed. And he gets up and he says, how many of you know what I'm going to talk about? This time, everyone raises their hand because they don't want him to leave. And then he says, well, if you already know what I'm going to talk about, there's no point in me talking about it. So he leaves. He's gone for another week. They invite him back the next Friday. And he says to a packed house, how many of you know what I'm going to talk about? This time they figured it out. Half the congregation raises their hand and half the congregation does not. So he says to them, oh, perfect. Those of you who know what I'm going to talk about, you teach the people who don't know what I'm going to talk about. I'm leaving. And he leaves again. That's the whole story. The idea is he's trying to free us, or the story is trying to free us of the guru complex. So his first story is trying to get us to realize that the light and moving into the light is not necessarily the answer, that it's really moving inward, and there's going to be shadow work, and there's going to be darkness and confusion, and that's the way it goes, the dark night of the soul. His second story, or the second story about him, is taking on the whole guru complex. A complex that is rampant, not only in his time, 13th century, but in our time. Everybody's a guru, or everybody wants to be a guru. Everyone thinks they have the answer. Everyone wants to brand her or his spiritual understanding in such a way as they can make a living at it. I mean, I've been doing this kind of work for decades, and it's very rare. If I'm offering a class, let's say in Kabbalah, which I haven't done in a long time, Jewish mysticism, I would offer a class in Kabbalah, and then prospective students would contact me and they would say, oh, this sounds really good. When I'm done with the class, will I be able to teach Kabbalah? And the answer, of course, is no. That's ridiculous. Kabbalah is a lifelong project. If you really want to understand Jewish mysticism, you have to be steeped in Hebrew. You have to be steeped in Aramaic. You have to know your Bible. You have to know the Talmud. You have to know the Zohar, all these incredibly thick, dense books. If you want to be a Kabbalist, if you want to teach the Kabbalah. But people who want to take a 2-hour seminar or even a weekend seminar and then go out and teach it, these are people who just want to be gurus. I don't. I have no interest in being a guru. I like sharing stuff that I find interesting. Hopefully I do it in an entertaining way, and hopefully you get something out of it. But there is no way that I would be caught, I hope, if you catch me, tell me, that I would be caught claiming that I have exclusive access to the truth. Later on, I'll share with you what I think is true. But I am not going to insist that it's true. If you look at religion, it's all about, big religion, it's all about putting yourself under the guidance of whatever gurus, and you can broaden the term, rabbis, priests, imams, swamis, etc., whatever masters the religion promotes. If you look outside big religion in the general world of spirituality, especially in the United States, though not exclusively, of our own time, you find all these people running around who claim to be gurus, who claim to have the truth, who claim to be enlightened, and there's no proof for any of it. It's just someone had to take a course, someone studied with another teacher. I believe in studying with teachers. I don't believe in surrendering to a guru, and I don't ever want to be mistaken for one, or to invite any of you to take on that mantle. I think the system is broken, it's abusive, and it leads to nothing, I think, my opinion, obviously, but nothing but hardship. So Nasruddin is trying to free us from big religion and the light and the guru system. And that's central to what we're doing with this notion of the holy rascal. Okay. So almost every slide has, or maybe every slide has a cartoon, and the cartoons are more to the point than my commentary. So, this cartoon says, which Bible verse best explains the Trump administration's immigration policy of seizing children from their parents at the US border? And the answer is Jesus wept, right? I was talking with Bishop Michael Curry. I don't know if you're familiar with the name, but he is the Archbishop of the Episcopal Church. He's the primate of the Episcopal Church. So he runs the church. And I was interviewing him on my podcast, and he talks about crazy Christians. And by crazy Christians, he means Jesus. I don't know if there were any after that. But a crazy Christian is someone who doesn't use the Bible to support obviously vile policies. And that his call is to get more crazy Christians, what I'm calling holy rascals. And he says, or he said on the show, that big religion, in his case, we're talking about the church, is an obstacle to holy rascality or being a crazy Christian. Because we live in a time when big religion aligns with Big Brother, with the state, to give divine sanction to irrationality, illiberalism, fascism, demagoguery, endless conflict, xenophobia, and a zero-sum worldview that exploits person and planet and demonizes the other. Those are what much of organized religion has in common. Regardless of the texts, regardless of saying, oh, it's all about love your neighbor as yourself. It isn't. It's about, especially in the case of immigration policy, it's about fearing your neighbor. You know, they're rapists, and I forgot all the things that Trump said about Mexicans, or what they're saying now to scare white suburban women that black people are going to move into your neighborhood. Oh my God, that is too scary. I have to vote for Trump. Now, you may be a Trump supporter. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm leaving that open as a possibility. But if it is, you have to look to see what is being said and how it's being supported. And in this case, it's supported by big religion. You can take a different country. You can go to Israel. You can go to Turkey. You can go to India. You can go to Myanmar. And you can find the same irrationality, illiberalism, fascism, all the rest of these things. And that's supported by the dominant religion of that culture. So, you know, you have a religion like Christianity and Judaism that both affirm loving your neighbor as yourself. And then you have policies that these religions endorse, either overtly or simply by not resisting them, that you have policies that these religions endorse that are anything but loving toward the neighbor. And, you know, in Israel, we're talking Palestinians. I mean, that's just not what the religion should be about. But big religion isn't about those things. Big religion is about power. And the best way to get power is to use fear, and the biggest tool of big religion is to do that. And it does it primarily by demonizing the other. If you have a spiritual practice, my guess is almost any spiritual practice. I want to make a distinction between spiritual practice and your traditions from a religion. But a spiritual practice which takes you inside, beyond the light that Nasruddin was talking about, that takes you inside, there is no other. As long as you have an other in your philosophy, and of course you could say, well, big religion is my other. So I cop to this. As long as you have an other, you haven't seen that everything is divine, right? You're still locked into this this zero-sum worldview. And I have to cop to that. I mean, I'm at a place where I think, I try not to demonize people, but I do demonize ideologies. And I think that big religion is a major cause of all the things that I find hateful in all the things that I hate about contemporary life. So here's how I understand big religion. First of all, it claims ultimate moral authority, which is ridiculous. What's moral in one religion is immoral in another religion, right? In Judaism, if you eat pigs, you have pork, you have broken a moral code. But it's not a code that you're going to find in Christianity. In some branches of Christianity, if a woman wears pants, she's acting immorally. But that doesn't prove true in other religions. But the religion claims to be the ultimate moral authority, which means whatever the boss says is what is right. It teaches moral accounting, which means that wealth, power, social status go to those whom God favors. I put karma in there because it's not always a supernatural anthropomorphized being. But if you're wealthy, if you've got the power, if you're at the top of the social hierarchy in big religion, it's because God favors you. I mean, you see that all the time with the religionists who support President Trump. I mean, he's just an easy one to pick on, but they see him as being chosen by God. And the way you can prove that he's chosen by God is he has power, he has money, and all of them have power and money. It values belief over reason. Right? That you should just believe. Don't think about it too deeply. It promotes a strict father patriarchy. So strict father is when you have an anthropomorphized God who's usually male, and he is strict. He's got rules, and he's watching you. and he is looking for violations. You know, where do you break the rules? And now you're going to get punished for it. Now, this is simply a way to keep people in line. I mean, it's a supernatural police force. It's Big Brother on a cosmic scale. But the religions we're talking about, when I'm talking about big religion, are these religions that uphold that kind of strict Father God. And it supports moral fluidity by giving divine sanction to any political system that supports its moral, cultural, and religious agenda. It really will back anyone who backs them. And that's what makes them scary. I mean, you want to think of religion as a repository for love. I do. Right? I would like to think of religion that way. I mean, the word religion comes from the Latin religare. It's supposed to mean unite or yoke. And in my mind, it means yoke the individual or unite the individual with the whole. And to realize that we're all a manifesting of this singular reality. I would like to think that's what religion is about, but it's not. Not the religions I'm talking about. It's about dividing people up into warring camps and supporting whatever moral system supports their own winning. So, they have no problem with teachers who are acting immorally. They have no problem supporting people who lead a very immoral life, as long as those teachers and those people are a gateway to their own securing greater power and holding on to greater power. So that's the kind of religion that I'm looking at. So we won't look at both of these. Let's just look at the bottom one. This is from Yeshayahu Leibowitz, a Israeli Orthodox Jewish philosopher in Israel. A person who accepts the opinion that the state, the nation, the homeland, security, and so forth are the supreme values, and that unconditional loyalty to those values is an absolute and sacred duty, will be capable of perpetuating every abomination for the sake of that sacred interest, without any pangs of conscience. Religion excuses, or is capable of excusing, anything. I mean, that's why during the Civil War in the United States, you had religious people on both sides quoting the same texts. They would just find the line in the Bible that supported slavery if they were in favor of enslaving people, and the line in the Bible that was against slavery if they were against enslaving people. And the Bible could be read in both ways, because the Bible is a human document representing, over a 1,000-year period, dozens of different authors, and therefore representing a lot of different opinions. When we insist upon using a holy book to justify what we want to do, it always works. Because we'll cherry pick the holy book to get those things we're looking for. And once that's done, we can do horrible things. And I guess it's up here, we'll read it. With or without religion, you would have good people doing good things and evil people doing evil things. But for good people to do evil things, that takes religion. You know what's wrong, and you don't want to do it, but then you do it. Kierkegaard called this, I'm not quoting him, I'm just paraphrasing him, but the abdicating, the moral absolutes. He uses the story of Abraham and Isaac, where, and this goes back, and I think Charles said this, about the human sacrifice. Clearly there are religions, and were religions, with human sacrifice. And the story of the near sacrifice of Isaac is, according to Jewish scholars, the way Judaism puts an end to child sacrifice. Because in the story, God says to Abraham, go kill Isaac. And Abraham never says, what? I'm not going to do that. No, he just gets up and he does it. Which is very strange, given the fact that earlier in the Abraham saga, God says to Abraham that God is going to destroy everyone in Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham stands up to God and says, you can't do that. That's immoral. And God has no clue of what morality is. Because for God, in that story, and maybe throughout the Bible, for God, morality is just what God wants. Morality is, it's the power of the powerful. And God being the most powerful, God decides what's right or wrong. Abraham in the Sodom and Gomorrah story says, no, that's not how it works. You can't slaughter the innocent along with the guilty. And then they have that whole debate, 50 innocent people, 40 innocent people, etc. But God is learning in that story what morality is, what justice is. Abraham says, shouldn't the judge of all the world act justly? And God has no clue in that story what justice is. Now, I see these as human stories. We wrote them. And it's a story to tell people, look, don't trust gods. Think this through for yourself. Abraham beats God in that one. But someone wrote this other story about the sacrifice of Isaac, and Abraham, it's like he never had the other experience with God. And maybe the author of the Isaac sacrifice story is unaware of the other story. But whatever it is, Abraham just gets up and he goes about carrying out God's desire, God's will to have Abraham to murder his son. In the end, it doesn't happen. And, Jewish scholars will say, well, this was a story written to show that God really doesn't want human sacrifice. He took Abraham to the edge because Abraham lived in a time of human sacrifice and thought, well, okay, this is what gods do. This is what gods do. And then God says, no, this is not what I do. So I'm supposed to put an end to human sacrifice. But the point is the same, that Abraham abdicated his own sense of right and wrong, his own sense of morality. And people do that all the time in the name of religion. And not just religion, certainly. But wherever we sacrifice our capacity to think, that's the danger. So just to be clear, God isn't the problem. It's this strict father God that's the problem. Faith isn't the problem. It's blind faith. Belief isn't the problem. It's beliefs that lead us to do hateful things. Religiosity isn't the problem. Spirituality isn't the problem. Big religion, which is about power, not truth, is the problem. And we didn't talk about tribes and tribalism, but tribes aren't the problem. We're all part of different groups. But tribalism, where my group is the best, the only true group, that's the problem. So what holy rascals try to do is, I mentioned this earlier, pull the curtain back on all of this, reveal the emperor has no clothes, all these little cultural touchstones. But the best way to do this is with humor. So I'm going to skip this slide and go right to this notion of frames. All the things that, all philosophies, all religions, all of this stuff are language structures. We express these truths and they come in frames. They have a worldview. And there are two types of worldviews, or two types of frames. Let's just call the authoritative frame is a zero-sum worldview. It means that the world is a fixed pie, and if you're going to get a bigger slice, someone else has to get a smaller slice. Nurturing frames are non-zero frames, non-zero worldviews that say, no, it's not that you have to lose in order for me to win. It's that I can't win unless we all win. So one way to understand this is very simply put, in game theory, non-zero games and zero-sum games. Zero-sum games are like football, baseball, games, tennis, right? Where you have to win. It's not like you just play on forever. Eventually, somebody wins. And someone who wins it all. It's a zero-sum game. In the world of sports, that makes total sense. But in the world of spirituality, in the world of everyday life, we need the other kind of frame. Not exclusively, because maybe you want to play tennis, but we need the other kind, the non-zero kind of interaction, the non-zero game. Because the non-zero game, the point is to keep the play going. So for example, my relationship with my family is a non-zero relationship. It's not about winning. It's not about my gaining power at their expense. There may be an argument, there may be a disagreement, but at some point, unless I want to lose the relationship, I will have to find a way to allow both of us to win, or all of us to win. If I argue to the point of the relationship breaking, nobody wins. So in a non-zero game, it's constantly give and take, but the idea is that the winner, to win a non-zero game, everybody has to benefit, as opposed to zero sum. So the frames that big religion tends to use are non-zero frames. Only certain people get to heaven. Everyone else goes to hell. Only my guru is the true guru. Everyone else is a fake. Only my religion is the revealed religion. Everything else is a hoax. That's zero sum. Non-zero sum is, in the way I understand it in this context, non-zero sum is every religion at its best is pointing toward the truth, but no religion has it. And most of the time, religions are not at their best. So most of the time, it's like the slide that's up here, where one side says, this is our blessed homeland, and they look across the sea and it's a barbarous wasteland. Our great religion, their primitive superstition. Our noble populace, their backward savages. I mean, we hear that, you can see it in the slide as a joke, but you can hear it in the news. You hear it all the time from all sides to one extent or another. Because we normally think in zero-sum ways. We normally think in winner-take-all. And politics tends to be in the United States, because we don't have a parliamentary system. Politics is, to a great degree, winner-take-all. But when it comes to religion, when you encounter a religion that makes that claim, the winner-take-all claim, the zero-sum claim, I would say that should tell you right off the bat that you're in dangerous territory. And my religion says that. Judaism says that. I mean, Jews like to think that we're liberal, but that's because we're liberal Jews, right? If you're a very Orthodox Jew, you think in zero-sum ways. Liberal Jews don't, because they're liberal first, in a sense, and Jewish second. The same thing with Christianity. I know a lot of wonderful liberal Christians who think exactly like I do, not because they're Christians, but because they're liberal. So we're talking about illiberal religion, the zero-sum religion. And when you're in that situation, you're in trouble, I would think. So the way to deal with it is you have to reframe. So George Lakoff is the person I quote first. He says, reframing is social change. Reframing means literally rethinking, but not to think again, but to recast the way you think, so that you're not thinking in an us, them, or us against them zero-sum way. That you see yourself, okay, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. And I fall into it. You can hear it in the way I'm talking. But you have to be able to catch it and say, wait a second. Can I move out of that us against them framework? Now, again, I'm copying to this. I find it very difficult to do because lots of reasons, but I am so, at the moment, so fearful of what I think is happening in the world, that, and so clear in my mind as what's causing it, that I tend to think in a zero-sum way, even as I'm hoping to be a non-zero person. So I realize it's difficult, but we're going to play with it anyway. how do you do reframing? So the most powerful way to reframe is to use humor. And this is why we're calling it, liberation and laughter, that kind of thing. Humor is absolutely essential. No, let me reframe that. Let me restate that. It's not essential. Humor is the biggest gun, the biggest weapon we have in the arsenal of liberation. Because when you can laugh at something, you're liberated from it. So think about this for a second. I don't know how well you know these texts, but this probably, you get a general sense. Does God ever laugh in the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, the Jewish Bible? No, God never laughs in the Bible. There are 3 Psalms where God scoffs, God laughs in derision at the enemies of the Jews or the enemies of God. But God never actually laughs. In the Gospels, does Jesus ever laugh? The answer is no. Muhammad, not in the Holy Quran, but in the Hadiths, the legends about Muhammad, Muhammad is said to smile, even to smile broadly so that you can see his teeth. But a point is made that he never laughs. He never, so you can see him actually laughing out loud. He never does that. And there's one hadith that says in Islam that kind of actual joyous laughter is haram. It's forbidden. Krishna never laughs. Buddha never laughs. Now, you see someone like the Dalai Lama, if you've ever seen him, he's always laughing. But if you look at the foundational characters here, Buddha, Krishna, etc., Moses doesn't laugh either. I mean, they don't laugh. There's something about laughter that big religion is afraid of. In fact, there's a story in the Hebrew Bible, which most of you probably know. Well, actually, we already talked about it. So Abraham's going to go kill his son Isaac. You have to know the Hebrew to get the deeper meaning here. But the name Isaac means laughter. If you take it as an allegory, then this is a story about the destruction of laughter. I don't know if you've read the novel or seen the movie. I love the movie Name of the Rose. It's Sean Connery is the star of the movie. And the novel is by Umberto Eco. And the plot is there's a series of murders going on in a medieval monastery. And Sean Connery plays a monk who's like the Catholic monk version of, he's a Franciscan version of Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. And he's trying to figure out who's killing these people and why. And spoiler alert, if you don't want to know this, mute me. But the story is that in the library of the monastery, there is a book by Aristotle about laughter. Now, we have no existing text by Aristotle on laughter. It may be a fiction that Umberto Eco simply created for his novel. But there's a book by Aristotle about laughter in a positive sense, that laughter is good. And the church in the story is saying, no, laughter is bad. And they don't want anyone to read this book. But it's Aristotle, and the church loves Aristotle in the Middle Ages. They can't destroy the book. So they put poison on the corners of the pages. So as the monks are reading it, and they lick their fingers and turn the page, they're ingesting through the skin this poison, and that's what's killing them. So the idea in all these examples is that there's something about laughter that is anathema to big religion. I was once invited to speak at Occidental College in California, Southern California. And my topic was laughter in the Bible. And I tried to make a case that the Bible says absurd things, and it wasn't just the Hebrew Bible, the whole Jewish and Christian Bibles, that the Bible says absurd things to get you to laugh. behind me, I'm facing a large audience, and behind me are all the clergy people in the chaplaincy at the college, and every religion is represented. A friend of mine who lives in Southern California, I stayed at her house. She drove me to the thing. She's sitting in the front row, and she's signaling me, but I don't understand what the signals are. I think she's like, yeah, this is great, but that's not what she's saying. She's trying to tell me that all the clergy behind me are boiling. They are furious. And I found out later that they thought any mention, any consideration that the Bible is there to make us laugh is anathema. And they were so angry, they wouldn't even join me in the receiving line. And in the receiving line, one guy came up to me, not clergy, just a father of one of the students. And he said, "You have destroyed my faith." And I thought he was kidding. I'm just not always on the ball here. I thought he was kidding. So I thought it was a joke. And I said, well, then your faith couldn't have been that strong to begin with. Didn't help. It didn't help. People were hugely angry with me just for suggesting that the Bible contains a lot of funny passages. Now, why would humor be liberating? What happens when you laugh is that you flood the brain with, you change your brain chemistry. You start breathing in a different way. If you've ever done Kundalini breath work, that kind of thing. When you're laughing really strongly, you do the same kind of breathing. You're flooding your brain with fresh chemicals and oxygen. And according to what I've been taught, you're freeing your brain from its thoughts. So when I was studying Zazen, Zen meditation, Zen Buddhism, in college, my Zen master was Joshu Suzaki Roshi. And I went to several retreats with Roshi. And at one of them, we have you're all gathered and he gives these talks. And at one of the talks, he said, Zazen is good. He's teaching us to sit Zen meditation, Zazen. But he says, if you can't do this, don't worry about it. All you need to do is get up in the morning, sit with both feet flat on the floor on the edge of your bed, and laugh. And he said, in the beginning, the laugh, it'll be forced. The laughter is forced. You're making yourself do it. Ha, ha, ha. But eventually, you actually begin to laugh. And it becomes an authentic laugh. And you just laugh. And he says, just laugh until the tears run down your face. And then get up and go about your day. Because the laughter has freed you from the madness of your thoughts. And that's the whole point here. That laughter frees us from lunacy, from the madness of, in this case, big religion. You can't laugh. Religions are afraid of laughter because they liberate you from what the religion is trying to promote. This is a summary of the Separe Auda thing. This is sort of what we were talking about, the culpability of big religion, the death of democracy, which I think religion and democracy are antithetical to one another. Apropos the notion of rabbi, you're not elected. Dare to know the transformative genius of open and honest conversation. I want to come back to that. Dare to know the liberating power of laughter and love, and dare to live what you dare to know. So I'm not going to go into these except for the second one. In addition to laughter, I think this notion of open, honest conversation is absolutely critical. Not talking about dialogue, not talking about, panel discussions and things like that. I mean, sitting down with someone or in a group and having a conversation where you're not scripted. Martin Buber says that real dialogue happens, I prefer the word conversation, but he says real dialogue happens when two people sit down and have no idea what they're going to say. Most of the time, we have scripts. And I don't know if you remember, it's a long time ago. I don't even know the guy's name, but he wrote, I'm okay, you're okay, the transactional analysis guy. and it was all about script, so that I'm just waiting for you to say something that triggers my line so I can say the pre-scripted thing. And we just go back and forth that way. And there's no real conversation. There's no real communication. It's just sharing scripts. Can you have a liberating, honest conversation with other people about these kinds of things? So I think you can. I think we need to. And so I created this thing called Cup of Wisdom. Actually, I'm drinking out of the Cup of Wisdom mug, which is one of the perks of joining the Cup of Wisdom program. But what it is I wrote this book, I edited it really, called The World Wisdom Bible. And it's an anthology of sacred teachings from the mystics. Now, it's not always individual mystics. Sometimes it's the mystical texts of a religion. But it goes into this whole perennial wisdom thing, but gives you the texts from every possible religion. These texts come from big religion, but they're texts that really undermine big religion because they're from the mystical side. And the idea of the World Wisdom Bible is just to flip through it and let these teachings stick in your head. And then what happened was, the original intent of the book was, our motto was move over Gideon. Remember the Gideon Bible? Maybe they still have them. But the Gideon organization's been around for 100 and something years. And they put little King James Bibles in hotel rooms and all of that. And I wanted to put the World Wisdom Bible next to the Gideon Bible in all the places that Gideon Bibles are found. I worked a deal out with a publisher, and I didn't make any money on the book. The whole idea was just to publish them and to find people who would give them away by putting them in hotels in different places. It worked a little bit, but it wasn't as easy as I thought. First of all, most hotels were not interested in having strangers come in and put books in their bed tables, side tables. And then people said, well, I'm reading the book and I want to talk about it. So I created this thing called Cup of Wisdom. Cup of Wisdom is a salon that you are invited to run in your own home. I mean, now all this stuff is hard. We've been doing it for years. There were dozens of these around the United States that I know of. People would do them in their house. They would do them in their churches and other religious places, libraries, community centers. And the whole idea was to get conversations started around texts that were non-zero texts, not zero-sum texts that were heart-opening and not heart-closing. And there was no cost, so that we invited you to get a dozen people together. And then originally it was a pay it forward thing where some other group would pay for your group. And we would send you a box of 12 copies of the World Wisdom Bible and 12 mugs that sort of make it a fun thing to do when you got together, and there was no cost to anybody. That's still the way it works. But since COVID, everything has sort of fallen apart. So I don't know where you want to take it, but I'm just putting it out there that if you're interested in doing something around conversation, you can go to, at the bottom of the slide, info@oneriverfoundation.org, and you can talk to Frank. Frank runs the foundation. He and I created it. But you can talk to him, and there's a handbook on that will just give you the PDF, and you can read how to actually do this. And I will be offering, again, just for donations, if anything, a class in the World Wisdom Bible, if you stay in touch with the One River Foundation. Which brings me to the last thing that I want to do. I'm doing something, the Jewish high holidays, and I know some of you are Jewish and probably most of you are not. But the Jewish high holidays are coming up very soon. And I don't go to synagogue. I haven't been to synagogue in a very long time. Yeah, I still keep that rabbi title for marketing purposes, but I find traditional synagogues liberal, conservative, or it doesn't make a difference. I find the prayers don't speak to me. I find the format tedious. It's just way too long, and I don't get anything out of it. So I just haven't gone. I've spent most of my high holidays for the last 20 years walking by a river in a wooded area of the town where I live and just meditating and chanting and doing my own thing. This year, I'm trying something different. So I put together, the high holidays are it's called the 10 Days of Awe, because it starts at Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year, and it ends at Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and the whole thing together is 10 days. So I created a 10-day meditation program. It's pre-recorded. You just download it. It takes you through the meaning of the holiday in the perennial wisdom sense. So Rosh Hashanah is not the Jewish New Year. It's an opportunity, because of the theme of Rosh Hashanah, to return to your true nature as a divine being. And Yom Kippur is about taking that realization of your own divinity and living it in the world as a blessing to all the families of the earth. In between, there are 8 days, and on the intermediary days, every day you can get, if you sign up, you'll get about a 20-minute recording of one or more of the 13 attributes of godliness or holiness or loving kindness. It goes by different names, that are the qualities that we need to develop, to cultivate in order to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. So equanimity and forgiveness, and there's 13 of them. So I've worked with 3 cantors. I don't know if anyone remembers Paul Winter Consort, the jazz group, very popular in the 80s. We're working with Eugene Friesen, who's the cellist from Paul Winter. We've got a bunch of people helping out here. It's all audio, except for several Zoom things during the 10-day period where we get on together and we sort of check in and we study a text. Not a ancient text. We study something from Kafka and something from a guy named Reb Zalman of Bratslav, who's a Kafkaesque author from the early 1800s. So anyway, I don't know if that made any sense, but if you go on oneriverfoundation.org, you'll see a little button to click on that. If you want to find out more about it, you can register. None of these things have a formal cost. We're always happy to receive donations, but there's no charge for it. So if you're looking for something to do for 10 days during the Jewish high holidays, whether you're Jewish or not, this could be a really moving experience. I really appreciated you giving me your time. I know it's hard to do this via Zoom. It's hard for me to project via Zoom and not seem stiff. But I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to share the material, and hopefully you got something out of it. So thank you very much.